Why, when you realize now that I'm not just making videos, I have to be intentional about every piece of content that I put out, why did you take that decision to commit to it? What is it in young people that you wanted to see happening?
So I always have conversations with my friends about politics, current affairs. I have those kinds of friends. We debate things. What's Trump going to say? What's this? What's going to happen there? But I quickly noticed that that was almost unique, not unique in the sense that me and my friends are the only people who speak about politics. I'm not saying that, please. I just felt like the more I engaged with people who were younger than me,
they're detached.
Yeah. They don't, it's not even detached. They almost don't have the knowledge.
Sure.
They just don't know what's happening. And I found that out in my own home. My brother, who's 10 years younger than me, had no real care for politics or what's happening in the country. I think the first big fight was him when we were voting last year and him saying he's not going to vote. And then that causing quite a rift in the family group. And me whiling, like, what do you mean you're not going to vote? This is so important, whatever. And him just having like, not a no care, but kind of just not understanding the importance of it. And I kind of clicked on that and I was just like, maybe that's something that we need to explore. How can I use myself? Because this is something that comes naturally to me. And that's kind of how it evolved, slowly but surely. How do I explain the ICJ? How do I explain this? But more than anything, I just felt like our country's in a dire situation. And as someone who understands the importance of being involved in society, I think we all enter a social contract that we don't necessarily always understand, right? Which is that if you want, first of all, that we don't live in isolation as a people. So the decisions that we make quite literally affect the next person. Littering is a very good example of it. When you throw that paper away, it affects how that other person, how this place looks. It affects, what's this thing called? It affects the environment, it affects cleaning. Now the cleaner has to come in earlier because it's so dirty on the streets. All these other things, it's like an ecosystem. And I kind of just wanted to tap into that, I think. And I think it was important for me because I just felt like young people just weren't grasping it as much. Yeah.
You said the country is in a dire situation. And I'll make an example by asking rather, what keeps you awake at night? My side, the state of Johannesburg keeps me awake because I live alone. And I pay 2,000 Rand electricity living alone because the price of electricity is absurd and I live alone.
Yeah.
I live alone and I need to have an electric fence and beams in my garden because being alone means I'm more prone to them coming in and causing criminality in my house.
Yeah.
And then I find out through Mkonazi and the commission that, wait a minute, even if I do call them, the police, nothing will happen to the criminals because they are being run by syndicates.
Yeah.
So those type of things keep me awake at night as the dire situations in this country. What do you think are the pressing dire situations right now?
For me, it's corruption, which I think, is glaringly obvious, because the corruption feeds into everything else. Two things for me that I think in this country that keep me up at night are the state of healthcare, the state of education, and the state of security. So that's three things. And that's because all those for me are directly impact people. The middle class at some point wasn't really complaining much about corruption because they were absolved from it, right? Because the cost of living was decent enough that I don't really care if Tembisa Hospital doesn't have beds because I'm going to walk over to
Netcare or what?
Yeah. And I'm going to get sorted. Now, private is also seeing bears and it's fires. So for me, I'll start with education because the youth needs education. You cannot keep your country stupid. You cannot look at the state of the economy and say, oh, people need to be entrepreneurs, but our pass rate is 33%. Telling somebody that they need to know a third of their work to get through life is just unreasonable. quite simply. And then that education feeds into the healthcare in the sense that people need to have resources to take care of themselves. The amounts that we're paying for medical aids and all this other stuff are just exorbitant, right? And then we move into security. The police, we are all overinsured. We all have beams and cameras. I mean, I remember when I first walked into my mother's house and she had cameras and I was just like, what's happening here? This is so strange.
CIA.
Like, what's going on? Like, well, why did you get cameras? And she was like, they've been like 5 break-ins around the house. And our house never used to have a wall. The whole time I grew up, you could just walk into our house and now we've had to build a wall. So those are all the things. But I think in general, the entire country is on its knees. As someone who buys the paper every Sunday, every department, there's corruption in tourism. The board did this. There's corruption with CETA. There's corruption.
Social development.
It's gotten to a point where I don't think there is a part of the state that hasn't been tainted by corruption. And that's devastating because those who benefit from corruption, when you're taking away like the basic needs of people, I just can't understand why. When you inflate your invoice, okay, and then you don't even build not one toilet. What greed do we have as a society in South Africa? What individualism have we adopted in South Africa? We, speak about Ubuntu as a philosophy all over the world. People like to say there's this philosophy. Yeah, there's this philosophy in Southern Africa called Ubuntu where everybody shares everything, and yet here we are in Southern Africa and we don't experience it. So I'm just always questioning what kind of society have we created where you really don't care about the next man? And what does that look like in the future? I
want us to look inward as well, Jax. We in the industry, me, podcaster, you who's been behind the scenes in marketing, in party lifestyle, in advertising, we are platforming though beneficiaries of corruption.
Okay.
And we know that they are beneficiaries of corruption.
Yes.
Both the men, the woman, their lives are fake. And we know it. That this person lives in a 1-bedroom flat. Therefore, their Louis Vuitton cappuccino bag for 120,000 rand, they could have not possibly gotten it through legal means. That means there are about 5 beds or 110 beds at Tembisa Hospital that were not delivered.
Yes.
So that this person that we are platforming and making a demigod on social media gets their bag. Furthermore, we give them followers, we clap hands for them, we say mother in the comment sections.
Yeah.
Are we not at fault too that we claim that we don't want corruption, but we don't call out our friends who are beneficiaries of corruption?
Oh, lie. I can't fight that. Personally, I don't have Louis bag friends, those kinds of Louis bag friends. But I agree with you. I mean, remember there was a time where it was all aspirational before the veil was lifted to us.
Yes.
Before we understood that, a lot of these people are getting these items in nefarious ways, let's say. There was a time it was aspirational. And it's not a South African problem. It's a global phenomenon, right? We have become extremely capitalistic as a society where we measure our worth based on luxury goods and items. Even when we find out that the actual cost of making them is $12, but you're paying $1,000 for it. I 100% agree that we're also at fault for not calling it out if we see our peers, doing all these things. But then I ask you, is my role in life to parent and police people?
Sure.
Because I don't have anyone parenting and policing me except myself and my mother occasionally. But do you know what I mean? So I then ask you, where do you think we've gone wrong? globally, where our value has now become attached to the material possessions that we own. And then we compromise ourselves in order to get those things. Because I personally have never felt pressure to have designer goods. I'm middle class, I'm privileged, so maybe that's why. Because I can look at something and say, I'm not walking into the store and paying this amount of money and flinching. Because that's what I've always said. I'm never going to buy designer items until I can walk into a store and not even look at the price and say, I actually want this cup because I like the way it looks.
Yeah. So
I ask you, am I supposed to police people? What are we supposed to do? When we see baddies, for example, with the bags and then this thing, knowing very well that all of this is fake or it's stolen money? How would you approach it?
I think we should use the places where we have some sort of influence and control to effect controls that have values in it. I'll make an example. If you're a marketer for an entry-level cell phone, an entry-level clothing brand, Mr. Price, for example, what business do you have getting a baddie who's always in Louis Vuitton as the brand ambassador?
I 100% agree with you.
You yourself are part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because first, it's misalignment of brand. Secondly, you're telling a complete lie. And thirdly, your market is young kids and students. And the young kids and students, you are telling them to aspire to an impossible life by putting at the forefront the face of corruption to be the face of your brand.
No, I 100% agree with you. There's not enough due diligence and thought process into the kind of people we are making aspirational. We've turned capitalism into aspiration. Remember back in the day with our parents, aspiration was, what degree do you have?
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, don't tell her what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it is unfortunate. I remember having the funniest conversation with my friends about how, when we started clubbing, we would go into the club and we would stand by the bar the whole night.
The whole night. And dance.
And dance.
With dance before in the club.
Right? And dance our lives away. And then something switched and the girlies went from matric dresses straight into the section. And I remember us being so upset, like, why didn't they have to grovel like the rest of us? They went from literally matric to champagne, matric to designer bags.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And the problem with that outlook is that 9 times out of 10, it's not sustainable. And I think big brands like luxury brands and so on have caught on that there's this entire market that is willing to, as you were saying, live in a 1-bedroom house in order to have nicer things. And so brands, brand managers, marketers are all liable, yes. But everybody is trying to just do their jobs at the same time. You know what I mean? They want to get their product to be viewed. So even at times when there's brand, and I don't agree with this necessarily, when there's brand misalignment, people are like, well, at least there was a human billboard behind it. It's a very tricky one.
What conversation are we having about actually, let's get straight into the commission that's currently going on, because it's a pivotal point. And it's actually a shift in our country, a shift we didn't see coming, a shift that was very much so necessary. As young people, how can we get involved in understanding that the state of corruption and infiltration of the crime intelligence, how bad it is?
So what's your question? How
can we get involved in assisting? Because as a citizen, we want to help. We're certainly becoming more aware. We were not aware. How do we get involved in things like that? Because as you're saying, young people were just, I'm just on TikTok dancing. Yeah.
I guess the first thing is to get informed, right? For me, understand what is actually happening. And I know it's not as easy for everyone. And I did a breakdown for one day, but then I went back to my school books and now people are yelling at me in the streets. Where's day 2 recap? And I'm so sorry, guys, but I have to try and get this degree. I think, first of all, equip yourself with the knowledge of what is actually happening. And then number 2, use your municipal vote next year in 2026 adequately. As you are equipping yourself with the knowledge and the information of the commissions, you are hearing so-and-so from this place, so-and-so from this place, so-and-so is in charge of this, did this, and, you know, in terms of the commission, and created this chaos and stopped this investigation. Equip yourself with the knowledge so you can change the power.
Sure.
Right? Because I think what we don't understand is how much power we have when we vote, right? The people I can't stand the most are people who don't vote at all. Because I think that's a lazy excuse to say that I don't have... There's no one. It's impossible that there's no one you align with the long row. I mean, our voting pages are so long.
Yeah.
You need to take the time to find the issues that matter most to you. And I had used this example when I was telling a story on Instagram story or whatever. If one of the things that appeals to you the most is, I think it's Musi Maimane who's championing some...
Education, the pass rate.
He's pass rate, and he's doing the one where the worker, your future employer cannot ask for your payslip.
Correct.
If that's the one thing you can hold on to, vote for him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If women and LGBTQIA plus issues are where you feel like, you know what, this is the one thing I can hold on to, then vote for this party. You know what I mean? But like I said on Instagram that day, know your master, know what he did to you, and unshackle yourself. The Bella Act, I remember doing a video recently on the Bella Act, and I was reading a newspaper article, and it was like, oh, on the 5th of September, they're closing comments on the 5th of September. And I was like, this is a very important bill to me because this is an education bill, right? This education bill is speaking about the size of classrooms, how many students a teacher is supposed to have. I mean, the physical size of class, how many teachers and so on and so forth. So I made a video and I explained some of the things that I thought to be important in the bill. And I said, please, can you go use your voice and go and add something there. So I think we make it more complex than it is at times, mostly because we don't understand how to use our voices, but the avenues are there. Equip yourself with the information, use your vote, and then start being quite literally active in what's happening in your country. You know, you can't just put your head in the sand at critical moments like this. Like you're saying, there's a shift that's currently happening, you know, and it happens in every society, in every era of the world, as we're seeing now. Like, if you're looking, it's giving World War II, that kind of period where we completely moved towards capitalism and changed the way we lived as society, and individualism became, you know, kind of like the
forefront of who we are.
The forefront of who we are.
Yeah.
There's a similar change that's happening. I'll use something as simple as people saying, I don't need the new iPhone anymore. As much as that is a economic issue in the sense that people are like, well, I actually can't afford it. People are wising up that why must I buy a new phone every year?
There's a level of activism there.
Right, right? Because
consciousness.
Yes, because Democratic Republic of Congo, we've seen the videos of what's happening there to make these iPhones of ours. You know, for me, there's a shift that's happening where I hope we are moving a little bit away from being so capitalistic and kind of thinking more about, like, how is the environment affected? How else can we create jobs other than buying phones from all those kinds of silly examples?
I love that. Even though perhaps I still have reservations of how it was executed. If coming from the perspective of saying people are no more conscious, even the backlash that personalities and influencers got for the Kealeboga saga was because people are conscious of, no, we're not going to let girls be trafficked anymore just willy-nilly. We might not have much power, but we can use our phones to scream.
And that's the thing for me.
Yeah.
You know? I think one of the best examples of a society using their phones and saying no more is Arab Spring, I think 2011, which is when there was the revolution in was it Syria, Egypt, essentially those Arab countries at the top there, where it all started with the price of bread. I can't remember which exact country it was. The price of bread had increased so much, people mobilized on Twitter. And then that's when we saw this wave take over the Arab lands, where they were just protesting the amount of gluttony their leaders were doing and whatnot. And so that's where it starts, right? It's as easy as standing up for something on your phone. It's as easy as reposting something about Palestine. It's as easy as having an opinion on corruption, on the commission. We are waking up, right? And then it's almost, and that's why I'm saying incremental change. And then the question now is, so what's the next level? Then we have to mobilize on the ground. You have to make it a little bit inconvenient, because South Africa very much is a country that likes to complain online, but then doesn't take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. You have to inconvenience our politicians and the people in charge. Sure. Your march has to take place on a Monday. Mm-hmm. It must stop traffic. Mm-hmm. You must decide that nobody's buying anything. Shab, we're still buying from spaza shops because we don't want mamzos to go out of business, because they are the breadwinners of this country.
But not the multinationals.
Yeah.
Suffer.
You know, to decide one day and say, nobody is going into a mall on this day. Let's do an economic shutdown. Because that's the only time the people in charge wake up.
Sure.
Is when it affects their pockets.
Directly.
Immediately.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's almost as if there has to be a way to transition from digital to physical. Because digital is not enough. We've seen our leaders unshamed by anything.
No. Shameless.
You can't shame them.
Shameless.
You can't shame them on social media and say this and that and that. Whereas, once you stop traffic, once you shut down the economy, we see taxi drivers do it all the time.
Yeah.
When those guys decide they're going on strike, the whole economy stops.
And it works. All the time.
You also have that power as a person. But
Yeah.
we need to find a way to mobilize. But there's always a tipping point. And I think South Africa is going towards that.
Where we're going to tip over?
There's always a catalyst. There's always an event. There's always something that switches. If you were to look at 1976, you would say the massacre of students. Switch. We went from passive protests. Obviously, there was still, operations, whatever, but we went from passive to saying, okay, now we are no longer passive. We are extremely active. We're taking it to the streets. We're burning down institutions. No. I'm not saying we should burn down institutions.
Yeah.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's always a tipping point in everything.
Sure.
I think South Africa is headed to that point, because when you tell graduates they must become lawyers, accountants, like our parents did and whatnot, and there's no jobs. And then you tell people in the rural areas that they must be farmers and all this other stuff, but there's no subsidies. And you tell people they should be educators and all of this stuff, but there's no resources to educate. Everybody's going to get frustrated at some point. And essentially, there will come a time where South Africa is ripe for revolution. And I think we're nearing that.
We're nearing it, eh? There's something that is also Miss Party Olwethu, who spoke about this on TikTok. She said the problem with people who were discriminated before is they graduate to becoming discriminators themselves, which is absurd to me that Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, has just criminalized homosexuality. But you guys are worshipping him and saying, he's so amazing, he's bringing order to the country. And it's like, okay, do you think that if somebody imposes sanctions on a certain person's rights, your rights are not next? We have a problem in South Africa where different tribes, different religious beliefs, different gender groups are at war. Which is absurd to me, because you are allowing the divide and conquer rule to actually affect us when our struggle